All right, so it's Todd Atkins, and I'm back with Miguel Iterade, MMA Conspiracy Hour. He also works with the dog rescue. We'll talk about a little bit, and just at the end. And before we start, I just want to thank our sponsor, Live to Fight Design. You can find them on Instagram at Live to Fight Design, and they make fight banners and gym banners. If you use my code Todd Atkins, you get $20 off your order. Now, Miguel, we had talked earlier about Fury and Ngannou. I think you were a little bit on the fence before about maybe it happening, but now that it has happened, as the subject of Francis winning versus the UFC or not, I assume this changes the dynamic of that conversation. So just kind of like to hear your thoughts on a little bit of both of those. Francis getting the fight, and then the change maybe of narrative of Francis winning versus Dana White in the UFC.
Yeah, I think it's a silly narrative, from the beginning. The UFC wanted to paint that like, oh, he's in a no-win situation or he can't lose, and they had all their parrots out there. That was sort of the company line, right? That he's not going to get a better deal than the one that he had here, and he turned around and did that. And with the PFL not being on the level of the UFC, that's where I still have to take a wait and see attitude. Like I said, we're a long way from seeing a PFL Africa. And there's a very big difference between putting all their stakes into like one show in Nairobi or Addis Ababa. Well, you pick a big city there, or is because PFL Africa to me implies 8 shows a year in Africa, or with 16 feet, 16 shows feeding, or PFL Africa has a philosophy that it hints at, right? So Ngannou's PFL deal was good for Ngannou because he sealed up 20 million, and he got himself 2 fights, and that 20 million, I'm sure, made him feel very good. But signing to fight Tyson Fury, which I think is another guaranteed 20 million, right? But signing to fight Tyson Fury is the checkmate on this game. That was the biggest fight out there for anybody. I don't know what type of defenses or what the UFC is going to say. At time, it looks like they let Ngannou walk away, but then even at some point during all this time, didn't Dana offer John Jones versus Tyson Fury? There wasn't some type of almost like ham-fisted controversy on the internet where that was going on, stepping on the toes of if they had gotten under Tyson Fury's skin enough. Keep in mind, Tyson Fury's the side of anybody, right? So if they had gotten under his skin enough, maybe that was an attempt to take the match away from Ngannou as they saw it coming close. But I think Fury did the right thing. I think he's got what he wants because Ngannou's menacing and he doesn't talk much. So the stage is his. And now we get to watch the Tyson Fury show again. The caveat of all this is Tyson's had matches postponed, has had matches fall apart for a variety of reasons. He goes off the deep end. Hopefully he's beyond that. Or, guilty by association in some way, shape, or form. I think they'll avoid some of that being in Riyadh. But again, when it comes down to putting this thing on British television, I'm sure Tyson Fury is thinking that he's going to get his usual paycheck from the television rights. And, that's actually, I believe, one of the things that cost him the last time Kinahan's name was brought up around him. So the fight has to happen. But right now it is signed and in motion, and it's months away, which is why I put that out there. Injury, anything like that causes a damper on this. It's got to happen. It's on its way, but it's got to happen. And sometimes, fate steps in.
Let me ask you this. I mean, it's likely Ngannou's not going to win this fight, barring he lands some haymaker, out of nowhere. So if he loses the fight, then what?
It depends on what type of performance he puts on. And that's one of the things that's delicate about a match like this is that, what part of it is, you know, the assumption in fighting, especially to the casual fan that puts so much into like how amazing it is and the athletes and what they put themselves through. You kind of want to see guys go all out. I think you see even in the UFC when guys turns into more of a slower boxing match. It's kind of a stalemate. The crowd lets you know. So if Ngannou can do anything to look decent in this fight, then his star goes up. Like for example, the Conor McGregor effect. McGregor managed to look good against Floyd. The stage was set pretty well. He showed what he thought he could do, and Floyd just waited for him to gas and knocked him out. Now, we've seen Floyd much older go to Japan for exhibitions, even and there, when somebody crosses Floyd, even now, Floyd's about 5 punches away from the knockout. He steps it up easy, and he knocks people out, non-professionals in his exhibitions and things in his post-career, So my firm belief is that Floyd probably could have been done with Conor if he had been going all out from the very beginning, but I don't think that was his goal. Now, it wasn't done to the point where I'll say he carried him or anything like that. But I think, as an athlete, Floyd wanted to see what the other guy had. And, once he started to see it, he was like, hey, that's not much. I'm okay. And then he proceeded to do what he did. Let's just let him gas himself out, hit him with little shots and stuff, and eventually take him out. But like I said, if he puts his pedal to the metal, Conor would never have been able to stay with him. So Ngannou's going to need that sort of effect. Tyson Fury is capable of either way, right? Like I think that the gap in boxing skill here is so cavernous that Tyson Fury could probably knock him out in 1 or 2 rounds if that's what he set out to do with all his mustard. But at the same time, he enjoys the show. He likes to dance. This is his stage. And you could see him letting this drag on 7 or 8 rounds. And at that point, it's all going to depend on Ngannou. I don't know, the conditioning's very different. Ngannou, his conditioning is going to have to be refined for this, because if the Mayweather situation against McGregor goes through the general scenario of letting him tire himself out to knock him out, Ngannou isn't going to make it to the 10th. He'll be tired long before then if he's really trying. But if he's settled into throwing 12 or 15 punches around, looking for one big shot, does he please the crowd enough? So I think it's going to be an interesting fight. But the first thing I'm going to want to see it. And the first thing I'm going to be looking for signs that, it's one of those things where they're not both trying to kill each other. They're trying to compete, and it's not, the essence of fighting really. But there's the theatrics become a part of it there.
Now, in his defense, I think he expected to get a boxing match, so he's probably been training for this for a long time. Ever since he was pretty much sure he was going to be done with the UFC. I think he left the UFC with the expectation of getting a boxing match. So I assume he's been training for this for quite a while. So I don't think he's going to necessarily be in the same situation as McGregor. I don't remember how long McGregor had to train for that Floyd fight, but
McGregor's at his weight is, I don't know. I think that he's able to capture a little more of a wide. I'm not enamored of heavyweights in terms of the skills they show. Mm-hmm. They tend to rely on power and things. And McGregor did show some boxing sophistication. It came back, and in MMA, it's his boxing has been, above everybody else in precision and things like that. That's kept him going. So I think he put in decent work, and I think he had an opponent that wasn't worried about him. So the opponent also has a radar for money there and stuff like that. Money Mayweather also enjoyed that big stage, and he was very happy with the performance, the money he made, and everything like that. So you're not going to get anything there. But was he ever in danger? Is the question. So again, will Ngannou put Tyson Fury in danger? It could happen because maybe with one punch that happens, and then Fury gets up. Maybe if he can't get up, he can't get up. But if he gets up and then finishes him, you've got something memorable and something that was probably good for both of them. So I don't know. I don't know how it goes, but I will tell you this. Montel Griffin, the boxing guy that was the first guy to beat Roy Jones. Okay, his father was a teacher, one of the coaches for the U.S. Olympic team, Muhammad Ali. So those guys, those era of teams, through Sugar Ray Leonard, through that era of teams in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, Montel grew up around those guys. And at some point, he learned the boxing, he learned the footwork when he was.
Go ahead.
So my point with Montel is he learned to box when he was 5 or 6 years old. When his father passed away, he stopped boxing. He made a promise to his mom, I think, that he wasn't going to box, but then came back to it in his teens. And in his teens, he realized he still knew it from when he was 6 years old. The footwork, it was more advanced than he thought because it had stuck with him. Tyson Fury strikes me as that type of pedigree. His father fought. They live and breathe this stuff. Ngannou isn't going to catch up to Tyson Fury. So, I don't think that's an option. The one thing that will not happen when this happens is that Ngannou comes out and outboxes him.
But let me ask you this. I mean, if he does get beat soundly, which if Tyson Fury wins, that's probably what would happen at some point. What does he do with PFL after that? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's October. It's at the end of October. So now, it's almost questionable if he's going to be available for the PFL or should be available for him in the first quarter. So now we're going to wait till the second quarter of 2024. None of that bodes well for how the PFL is managing their big signing. You know what I mean? Especially without an obvious opponent, without an announcement. And again, once they got back past the announcement that they signed Ngannou, it's not like we've been hit by a flood of media from them. They've been silent, actually, really. So, we're counting on him losing the boxing match, but he's got his big payday, and now he returns to MMA. And that's basically what they have to do. The king is back, the heavyweight champion and this is like what I said, they'll be weak in that they can't show highlight film or anything like that. But they just in hype and talk, they're getting the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world back in the ring into his game, and we'll just see who the opponent is. And they promised us something impressive, so we're waiting. We're waiting.
Now, do you think maybe PFL is going to be able to get some sort of co-promotion out of this boxing match?
They should. I think at the end of the day, the PFL's contract gives them some type of control over Tyson Fury, which is why when they signed him, they stated that they were going to allow the one-off boxing match or something like that for that. So that all had to be talked about, and then the rest of it is there. They would be foolish to not try to co-promote in some way. They're going to be there. This is far and away the most eyes that are ever going to be on a PFL guy, that have ever been on a PFL guy. And likely they're not going to get, like between now and then, the PFL is going to explode and be a big show. So they're flatlined. They should be doing anything to get their product out there.
Now, let me ask you this. Do you think this is going to open the gate for like a few guys or maybe one guy, or Jake Paul and Nate Diaz is coming up. I assume there's going to be a release of what Nate's payday is. People are going to see that. People are going to
Yeah.
see what Francis made. Fighters are going to see that. How much of an effect do you think this would have on the collective of guys who maybe think they have that ability?
Nate's a special case because Nate and Jake Paul, I'm not like instinctually, I don't know who's the A side, because Nate is a guy I don't want to disrespect him and call him the B side because the other guy's a big YouTube star and stuff like that. Are you dying, Todd? The other guy, he took a loss in his last fight. And I think Nate has that mentality where this is a job. He's coming to do a job that, this fraud has to be shown what's real and what's not. And if we get that Nate Diaz, then that's a pretty special Nate Diaz. Nate, the package, they bring their own media attention. So I wouldn't call them the B side of that fight. I think Jake Paul did a good job in luring them. And yes, they're probably making good money because if not, why do it? But there's nobody else on the UFC roster who should be able to who can look at that and say, I can do what Nate Diaz does. Even someone like George Masvidal, owns a win over Nate, BMF champ, has at the end of his career done a very good job at marketing and things like that, and monetizing for himself, and hopefully, now that he's retired, he's walking away with a good substantial amount of money in there for him. And he's got 50 fights. But Nate and his brother, that combination, and then to be honest with you, the whole pot smoking, gangy feel of or not even gangy, but like a mafia feel where it's like they're a brotherhood, with them and their boys. Jake Shields, Gilbert Melendez, like the guy, David Terrell, the guys that rolled with the Diaz's from the early days are still with them, basically. So I think that had a lot of appeal, cult appeal. It started as a cult appeal, but they've grown it for 10, 15 years, and they have been very good at that. And the weed thing helps them too, breaking out a joint, and now everybody's got a clip and stuff like that. And man, George doesn't have that. So George would be foolish to think that he's going to maneuver. Right now, George is a guy that the UFC put at the top, and the guys at the UFC top make that. Nate's the guy that brings his own audience. I see nobody else in the UFC with that. People could think that they might, but Nate's appeal is a crossover appeal. It's not just MMA fighting.
Well, let me ask you about Brandon Moreno. I know we talked a little bit about this off record, but Brandon Moreno, I heard him mention that he was interested in trying to do some boxing because I guess that's what he had been focusing on a lot. In his fight, his boxing looked pretty good against Pantoja, even though he didn't win the fight. Some people thought he did, but apparently he's had a pretty heavy focus on it. He feels like he's improving a lot in that area. Do you think someone like him could try?
I believe that the lower the weight classes go, especially in boxing, the more it becomes a game of precision and a game of repetition. And you could just see, that the boxing game, it's so refined at 135 pounds. Brandon Moreno, what does he want to do? Go out and start out in 4-round smokers, work his way up? Okay, we'll see. Right around 15-0, there's going to be a test that's too much for him and he'll get run over. Because what sits at the top of this division is elite guys. Even if you go back, Floyd Mayweather was a lightweight. That's 135 pounds. You got Vasyl Lomachenko right there. There's two of the guys that this century could be 1 and 2 of the highest skilled guys that we've seen ever. In the context here. So one of them would have to say, sure, I'll do a one-off boxing match against this MMA guy for the money and let's rah. But he's not going to stand a chance, not against those elite guys. Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney. These are the guys at 135 right now. Teofimo Lopez. It's not. So I think the heavyweight division and the heavyweight character sort of covers some holes for Ngannou and Tyson. And that is that the gap, though cavernous, is not as cavernous as Brandon. Brandon Moreno would make it well protected to be a 15 or 20-0 boxing guy, and then they're going to make a mistake in matchmaking, or they're going to take too big a step and he's going to get shot down. That's my opinion. As much as he may be training boxing, you're talking about guys, like I said, Floyd Mayweather. His parents were, Vasyl Lomachenko, his dad's his trainer. There's video of him, he took ballet lessons before they went to boxing training so that he would have real precision in his footwork when he was a boy. Brandon Moreno isn't going to be able to catch up to them. In fact, if they sign the fight now and Moreno dedicates himself to just boxing, Lomachenko might learn more and advance his game more than Moreno does because that's what they do. That's what he's been doing his whole life. So I don't like this selling short of boxing, and I wish the boxing community were stronger about it, because I do think it's a game. When you're comparing boxing and MMA, the simplest way I like to say it is you're comparing breakdancing and ballet. Yeah, they're both dancers, but it's so different that for a breakdancer to just say, yeah, I'm going to go step in and do Nutcracker, not going to happen. And at the same time, you can take Baryshnikov, and, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to do an arm spin or, some of the real advanced moves that make breakdancing, something that's lasted and incredible skill, incredible, but you can't compare it to ballet. And that's what you're doing with this MMA boxing crossover stuff. And it gets even worse because, the guys like you, Todd, who've been around and stuff, we all remember the old days where it's like you'd hear a fighter say, yeah, I used to fight in this little bar and they would call people out of the audience, That's literally what fighting YouTubers is. You're fighting people out of the audience. And that's exactly what Jake Paul is. He's a drunk audience member that says, I can do this. And that's what he's walking in. Except for in the modern era, I guess it's become compelling, but that's what that is. And so, yeah, boxing, those guys are too skilled for Brandon Moreno, I think.
Yeah, but when you have a fighter in the UFC who's even a guy, Brandon Moreno's stature, he could look at it and say, I don't know if he's ever made $1 million for a fight. I assume probably not. Maybe he did. He was a champion, maybe. But, an MMA fighter's looking at it from, okay, I'll never make $1 million or I'll never make 2.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go do this, even if it's just one fight.
Yeah, but like I said, for Brandon Moreno, the case is will one of the top names in boxing do a one-off fight, considering the money, and can they make it hyped enough? And I don't know, does Moreno move the needle like that on the internet? I'm not, I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe you could have Moreno and Ryan Garcia, 2 Mexicans.
Yeah, and Ryan Garcia was exactly what I was trying to remember his name. Ryan Garcia is a nice prototype for this in terms of, maybe he needs a bounce back fight now, and that would entice him, into like, they can make it into the story behind the fights is interesting because it is a challenge there among A-type individuals there that if they're trying to kill each other in these fights, and they're trying to, fight to the 100% of their potential, they can make pretty compelling fights at some point. Garcia is way too advanced for Brandon Moreno in boxing.
I agree. But I think it would sell big in Vegas.
Yeah,
Or even
Yeah,
Mexico if they did it there.
Ryan's being forced to carry. Ryan's the A side there, and Ryan may be looking for a fight where he's the B side because if he can take what the A side gets, I don't know, but that's the thing, and this brings me back to where we were conversing about Ngannou before the contracts was who are the best opponents. So Moreno can't just say, "Hey, I'm available. I want to do this." Who are we going to fight? What's the best opponent? Ryan Garcia? Okay, Todd started the list for us. That's perfect. Now, let's have that conversation. But Todd, to be honest with you, Ryan Garcia versus Brandon Moreno, maybe they could do it on the undercard of Tyson Fury. But if they think that that's enough to carry one of these promotions that, is trying to get crossover audience and trying to get the attention of casuals and things, I'm not sure that's enough. I'm not sure Garcia Moreno is enough to carry a bill like those, like, Jake Paul's name does, like Tyson Fury's name does, like Mayweather's name.
I went to the UFC in Dallas where they had, the Amanda Nunes and the first fight that she lost to Juliana Pena. And Brandon was, I think, the co-main. I think him and Kai France were the co-main, I think. Mm-hmm. He got a big response in that arena. Huge.
Good.
In Dallas.
Good, but
so what I'm saying is Ryan Garcia's popular too. He a lot of those people came to watch the Davis fight because of him. And Davis. But what I'm saying is I think it would sell.
Well, we're talking, do if you can. If not, maybe we can look it up for the next podcast. But if I remember correctly, Ryan Garcia's got more than 1 million Instagram followers. I don't think Brandon Moreno is close to that.
Okay.
And that is a metric that some people use, including the UFC has mentioned it. So, and again, you got a 20,000 seat arena, and in Dallas, you have an ethnic slant to it where there's going to be a lot of Latinos, and Latinos will root for Latinos. It may not be him. What's that?
Moreno's got 2.2.
2.2 million?
Yeah.
Okay, check Ryan Garcia then.
Oh,
then maybe I am underestimating him.
Yeah. It's good that we can look this stuff up now.
It's great that you can.
I wasn't looking it up as much before. Let's take a look. Okay. 10.3.
10. Okay. So that's what I suspected, is that we would see a big difference and that Ryan Garcia was the bigger star, quote unquote. So the numbers back me up. I was off on my numbers. I apologize for that. But Garcia had a reputation beyond boxing for that, and he does. There've been a few silly, catchy, memes that, he's monetizing off his YouTube channels, so he'll be the A side. He'll be the A side. But again, I'm not sure Brandon Moreno versus Garcia is enough to headline one of these bills. And then you put a couple of rappers on the undercard, and MMA guys retired or whatever. I don't think that this is a rinse and repeat that way. I think it does take two special, fighters meeting. And, not that these guys, that Moreno's not special or Ryan's not special and stuff, but, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to quantify exactly that, but you can't just roll these cards out every 3 months and just pick a guy and pick a guy and pick a guy, because they will get smaller and smaller as the timeline goes through, And if Moreno wants to do a one-off, then, I think he could do a one-off and then be an undercard. And then, it's up in the air about the pay.
Yeah, if I was going to match him, I wouldn't want to match him against a guy who has a lot of knockouts. Garcia doesn't have a lot of fights in general, right? But he's more known for what he does on the internet, I would say.
Garcia is known for a body shot, and he's knocked out a lot of people with that. And Garcia, like I said, is a guy who understands the marketing end of things and is way ahead there. he would be a good opponent to attract attention for Moreno. Garcia might consider it because he does need a bounce back fight. He just lost his last fight, a world championship fight. A Gervonta Davis, kind of put an end to his undefeated streak. And so now he is probably considering the next opponent. Maybe if you can monetize against Moreno, he'll take it as a match that, okay, I'm not too worried about. He's not going to lose that in the boxing match.
He did have a massive amateur career, though. He has over 200 amateur fights.
Garcia?
Yeah. 215 and 15. So he's very experienced.
He just lost to Gervonta Davis.
Yeah.
And, Davis is
I wouldn't want to put Davis in the Moreno because there's too much power. I don't want to debut my guy against a knockout artist. You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, it's going to take something like that to attract enough attention. Here's the thing is, do you think Moreno is going to come over and do a series of these, or try to do a boxing career kind of thing and switch over and do 10 or 12 fights and be building something up? I don't know how that goes for him, but if he's going to just come over and do one, try to grab that money, yeah, Gervonta or one of the elite guys would be, Vasyl Lomachenko maybe won't. Vasyl Lomachenko will knock him out.
Yeah.
Also, but it won't be as painful. I don't know.
Lomachenko will probably make him look bad just because of how he fights, too. Lomachenko would fly around him and make him look bad.
But Lomachenko at the same time is also a guy who at times, I don't remember exactly which one, but there was one of his major title fights. Maybe he was hurt a little bit, but he took like the first 6 rounds off. He didn't do anything. He gave the match away and then, kind of closed the distance a little bit at the end and stuff. But he's a slower starter. He's older now. I just don't know if Lomachenko moves the needle in terms of like crossover pay-per-view people. Where boxing purists may want to watch it. Fight fans may want to watch it. But the idea behind these types of mixed fights is to reach an audience beyond that. Garcia is the right opponent for that because I think he brings some of that in, naturally. But to me, it sounds like more of like a match for the purists. Like, the MMA guys will be rooting for Moreno. The boxing guys will be rooting for their boxing person. And, that's cool. That's cool. But that's not a crossover. You can't, like I said, this is Ngannou Fury. It's now 6 years since Floyd Conor. So it took 6 years for something to come up to approach that. Because if you think, Anderson Silva against Julio Cesar Chavez did it, it didn't. Anderson got to put some money away, and that's good for him. But it's not like people are still talking about that fight today.
I'm trying to see if we can use our influence to make a groundswell for a fight.
Hey,
maybe people hear Moreno versus Garcia on our show, and
I'm okay with that. I've been known to dabble in matchmaking, so if Moreno was going to do that, I think Ryan Garcia would be the natural best opponent. You could even take that a step further. Gervonta stopped him. I think Gervonta, Haney. There's a level above maybe Garcia that he's still yet to achieve. So I think that is. I don't think that'll manifest itself because Garcia is too far ahead of Moreno for boxing. But at least it's not the top shelf right now.
Now there's somebody else sitting out there who's not fighting, who was scheduled to fight Michael Chandler. And I'm sure he's going to see that Ngannou's getting this fight. Do you think he's going to try to get another boxing match? I heard him say some things about Canelo in an interview. I could fight Canelo, blah, blah, blah. Do you think he's going to, why fight Michael Chandler when maybe he could just go do another boxing match against somebody, or will the UFC prevent him from doing
it? I think that Conor is at this point a risk, an X factor, because at the end of the day they call it FU money because you can tell anybody FU, you've got enough money to live the rest of your life. But I think he's taking advantage of that in some ways, or using, or now that he's achieved that, it's definitely affected his psychology. We've talked in a previous podcast. I urge people to go look at it. But I do think his substance abuse, from alcohol to possibly cocaine and possibly steroids and that type of thing is a factor. Not signing up for USADA, like I said, realize what happened. They sign him for the TV show. Before anything airs or anything like that, they come out. USADA says he's not in the pool. If he's not in the pool, what can we do? And he, fuck you, USADA. I mean, I'll do what I want, but never join the pool. At that moment, we as a collective MMA fan base, or whatever you want to call it, viewership or whatever, knew that Conor wasn't going to fight because the logistics just are not there anymore. But we went through the whole facade of the TV show, and who knows what behind the scenes moves Conor may have been trying to make to do this, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he just, hey, sure, I'll spend 5 weeks in Vegas. Like I said, a guy with his money and his things probably likes Vegas. So sure, you'll shoot there, but no intent to fight. Because that's the thing is like, what I don't see here is like, the fight's not happening. Where's the panic in Conor? Where's the like, wait, why? I'm ready to fight. Where, what can I do? You see none of that. Part of the reason for that is probably because of Mayweather and Conor making him $100 million. Every single fight since then, he takes a pay cut, because he's already been to the pinnacle. The UFC was never going to pay him that. So very next fight, it was like he made 30. And he's probably going to get more towards the end of like maybe making 25 for this one.
But if he fights Canelo, what? You think he makes 50?
But I think, like I said, yeah, Canelo's one of those guys at this point that, he's the A side. And, to say that on McGregor, McGregor might have been the A side if he had struck in while the iron was hot back, a few years ago. But he's been inactive. He's been, quite frankly, a buffoon in public. Every time he's in public, it's you run the risk of him slapping old men, or, having an incident with women, or, just being drunk and whatever. So, yeah, he'll walk into that as the B side, and hopefully we'll see. Here's the interesting part is, I know Ngannou's guaranteed 20 million, but if he makes just 20 million for this, it's 20% of what McGregor got. So it wasn't even in the ballpark. So that's the other thing is, once Conor and McGregor happen, it may be 20 years before you can get to something that will equal that in size. I think Tyson and Ngannou, properly managed because of the heavyweight angle, should be aiming for that, but they probably won't get there. And so let's say they get to 3 million pay-per-view buys or whatever, the monetization is how does Ngannou make more than just a 20 million flat guarantee? What is his capabilities of making? Because McGregor wasn't guaranteed 100 million. It blew up to that because it got to be the entity it was, right? And Mayweather, as the A side pushing it, probably banked 3 times that, right? So that's the interesting part is, to me, Ngannou should be trying to get to 40, 50 million on this fight. If not the 100, but 20 million would be something where, yeah, you got to take it. I mean, 20 million is 20 million. That's what you get there. But other people, you should realize, and that should be the number one sign to what you're asking about is, can anybody just jump over and do it? No, you can't. Since it was done by Mayweather and Conor, everybody else has made less money. Nobody's approached it. We've had that effect happen in many sports, go back to the Jack Dempsey days where he was the first, the Jack Dempsey days with radio broadcasts and things, and he got himself, to $1 million, gates on his fights and things. But then the next wave of champions, it wasn't until Joe Louis that anybody even moved the radar because he had gotten so big. So the McGregor thing is a flag with Mayweather. That's the point that everybody wants to make. But honestly, looking at it, nobody's come close. And I don't think Canelo McGregor would come close either. I don't think Canelo commands a lot of audience, but I'm not sure. Hopefully, the thing I like about Canelo is that he does have a mean streak, and I think he's got a no nonsense streak too, and that he's not going to put up with too much. And if he wants to hurt Conor, I'm all for that. I think Conor right now needs an ass kicking like Canelo could give him in a boxing match, and that might help to straighten him out a little bit. But yeah, that's what you got to look at is he's not satisfied anymore making $10-20 million. So it's like, why it doesn't move his knee? Yeah, so the fights just don't happen.
Yeah, I think also, when he's sitting at home in his mansion or wherever he lives, in Ireland or whatever, I think when he watches this fight, Fury and Ngannou and Riyadh, and I'd assume it's going to be kind of a big spectacle, I would think. And he's going to be watching that saying, I don't need to come back to the UFC. Why would I do this? I'm a prize fighter. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be against Canelo or one of these guys. I'm not going to come back.
Yeah, he wants to do it big, and that's going to be interesting and delicate because I'm sure he's got a contract that him in the UFC, hammered out. I'm sure he's got a few things in there that other people don't. But, maybe after Conor and Mayweather, there is some type of clause where he's allowed to do another one-off. If the UFC was to do the same thing they did with Mayweather, they'd partner in there and they grab a bite of it. And maybe that's the way for McGregor to go out from all of this. So, but like I said, at this point, with all the signs that he's been sending himself out for the last couple of years, in order to set up a fight like that, you got to have two reliable guys. Like Conor wanted the Mayweather fight the first time. There was no doubt you had his full 100% attention. Now, will that be the case? Because if not, then, an investor may think it's not worth doing. And McGregor to me is at that level. It's like how it was. So he's not going to fight Chandler in December like planned or whatever. So when's he going to fight Chandler? No one's working on that. So who is he going to fight? No one's working on that either.
Derek Galanda said something to me that's interesting. I want to run this by you. He was saying that he thinks part of the reason McGregor's not fighting Chandler. Obviously, the season was filmed earlier. I don't know how much earlier, but he thinks it could have been that as McGregor's losing all these fights in the Ultimate Fighter, all of them so far, that he just said, all right, kind of like in spite of Chandler, to just say, I lost all these fights, so I'm not going to fight you anymore. Kind of like punishment. Because of his ego, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And you're dealing with a guy, look, there's a fine line of when an ego is bad. And, I think he's crossed it. So you don't know what you're reacting to. Like I said, I think the alcohol and the things like that, who knows what else in Vegas and things, girls can be a problem like that too, but I don't think that they got the full McGregor dedicated to fighting. Like at this point, he's like, yeah, I'm a fighter. I came from nothing. I'm a fighter at heart. And that's very much his persona to present himself. But what he's doing now is he's counting on, once the fight is signed, that motivation to kick in and put the 2 months in, he's counting on that muscle memory to come bring that back. And he's failing at doing that. He hasn't been able to actually do that. So yeah, I think psychologically, we don't know what you're going to get. So if he signs for the big fight with Saul Alvarez, yeah, then maybe he spends 2 months on lockdown, comes in good shape, and gives a good showing, and his brand takes another bump. But, you know, I think his prospects were much better going into the Mayweather fight when he had nothing to lose. Now, he's already, now he has something to lose.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think Canelo would be motivated to kill him.
Yeah, I think at some point he'll annoy Canelo in some way, and Canelo will want to hurt him. And we'll see if McGregor can somehow avoid that, and McGregor and the other guy's trying to, and it's visible, and they give us some type of great show. Then who knows, And when you're in a fight, he's, no doubt McGregor will have instinct, and he's been there before. Big fight and all, he's not worried. He's not going to be intimidated by Canelo. Start with that. So, yeah, how much? But I have no expectation of seeing a major show anymore. Not from McGregor. All I see is train wrecks.
All right. Now, one last thing. It looks like Ronda Rousey has kind of poured cold water on her coming back. I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Again, and maybe we could tie in some of the things that we talked about here. So the UFC and the WWE are now the same company. And we're a few years away, maybe 18 months, maybe a year, but 18 months for that merger to really be like, so that, like, for example, I think, both of them have creative departments. At some point, they're going to take the best of the best and say, okay, one creative department, even if it's different department, whatever. Right? There's a lot of duplication there. Once they work through some of that, I think we'll see something. And I've mentioned this on the podcast here before. Rousey at 36, as a woman at 36, past her prime, especially in WWE, where she has to sort of concentrate on being strong, keeping the body, being and the endurance that it takes. I don't think they put her on the 5 fights a week schedule for long, but still, the training and things necessary for that, and even the timing and things, is not conducive to MMA. For her to think she's going to just walk back in and take on, women that have progressed, so where does all this come in? I think that this can be done in such a way that Ronda will fight a UFC style fight on a WWE show. Outcome maybe even not determined in some way, shape, or form. I don't know, what it need, but what you will see there is that if they want to portray Ronda now in WWE, they can actually show you her beating up Misha Tate, arm barring, everybody. She had a run there where she was finishing everybody in very short order. The highlight clips that you can produce that cross over there and appeal, I think that they can make a version of like I said, with Rousey, they've already got an MMA fighter as her tag team partner and on the roster, and the expectation there is that they will fight. And that could very well be, she's 40, is Shayna Baszler. So Shayna's a little older. And again, so less likely. So Shayna, at this point, I don't think she wants to. She's done so well for herself now. I don't think she's looking back and wants to go back to the UFC and that type of grind anymore. But I think that right there, you can credibly do some type of UFC crossover simulation, even if they go full, like I said, they're both older athletes and stuff. You can't put them in with the prime time people. And then with the highlight packages and things, you'll see a different level. This is what Ngannou cannot do with Fury, is you'll never see Ngannou knocking out people in the UFC in the Fury highlight package. If it happens, then the UFC is taking a bite. They already got paid.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge. I don't think, like, when you mention this stuff, maybe you could educate people on just how important that is. Sounds like it's not maybe to the average person, but having that stuff in there, could you kind of elaborate on just how important that is?
I'm sorry, having what stuff in there?
the highlight packages and whatnot,
Oh, here's the thing: is that's what the UFC is excelled at. Once Zuffa took over, they understood we got to be in everybody's face. That means, a press conference every week or a press conference twice a week. Dana talking usually. From when he was young and with energy and cared, it was always Dana. And Dana was happy to take on that energy. You see nobody who matches that. And anytime you shut off that flow of information, like the PFL has done, the PFL, after they announced Ngannou, had everybody on their side waiting. What more you have for us? And they delivered precisely nothing. So that's the difference. Yeah, I think you've got to be ready. You got to, and as an organization, you got to be ready to follow up. So Ronda and Shayna won their WrestleMania tag team match now, this last WrestleMania, which is the 80,000 people in the live audience and a huge amount of people on the WWE network. And now at some point throughout this year, you'll see them break up, some type of double cross or some type of lack of one of them wants the spotlight or they lose trust or something, and they'll fight at the next WrestleMania. Amanda Nunes just retired, and Amanda, Brazil in general, I don't think the Brazilians all are enamored with WWE style fighting, that there's more of a reality to it. But I think Amanda retired. Now the WWE creative people called her and said, look, we have your highlight packages. We have you destroying Ronda. Ronda just beat Shayna. We need somebody to come. And Ronda's at, again, just being portrayed as the Brock Lesnar on the women's side. And we need somebody to come in and stop the show for us. Now, Amanda, you cannot count on her to come in and be a superstar on the mic, which in WWE you have to be able to do, right? But again, unprecedented, they will be able to show all the clips of Amanda's destructions, including those of Ronda. And now I'm coming for you. I'm not going to say another word. Talk to my manager. And they put, some good mouthpiece on there for her. It may not happen, but the possibilities are there now. That's the kind of thing. And the bottom line is Ronda at the top of a WWE WrestleMania, everybody will be monetizing there. And they'll make it seem like a UFC match, even if, it has a predetermined outcome. And that's one of those things where the UFC will want to make sure that there's not too much of it or whatever, but this is the world we live in now. It's the same company.
Well, I think something interesting to end on. Now, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about this project you're working on in Costa Rica with the dog rescue and some other things you're doing with the MMA collector.
Well, we're chugging away at interviews here. I got an interview in about 2 hours with John Donahue, the Australian black belt who reffed a lot of the early John Peretti shows and was a black belt under Gene LaBelle and things. So we're delving into some MMA history there, which is, something I enjoy doing. And the Wet Nose Project is this woman, Ashley Botha. She's a South African lady, lives here in Costa Rica. And, she's got 75 animals she's rescued from the street. Cats and dogs, basically. But so I've been working with them. I've been learning, things. I'm training animals and, going out at night and feeding animals. And we had to go out and there was a cat that was run over that, get it off the street. It's like, try not to act like a third world country, So it's like just showing dignity and respect. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like a better person trying to help the animals. They're very grateful. And I have 3 dogs that are from Ashley's rescue. And, hey, they give me a lot of comfort. They're good animals, and I'm in tune with them. So I'm heading in that direction. I'm enjoying working with them, and we'll see. We'll see if I'm going back to help train those pit bulls. There's an official trainer that's going to be with them, and see if I can pick up some knowledge there. I'm getting pretty good though. I'm getting pretty good.
Yeah, and you'll hear us talk a little bit more about this in the future. So that's kind of why I wanted to, bring it up. This is something that we'll, try to help with the show in the future, and we'll get into that at another time. But
Yeah,
did you have anything else you wanted to?
she lives off of donate. She has a business that has her income, and the shelter is her house that she has a mortgage on. It's a labor of love to have 75 animals that you got to feed and take out and clean every day, and that sort of stuff. And she does it all on donations. I've been helping her with the idea of putting together enough videos and things like that you can become a presence, and maybe that will alleviate some. I think you gotta have people, you gotta have something to show people. You're gonna ask them for money, and I think at some point, donations would be a big help. Like, for example, these pit bulls we rescued 3 years ago, and they're at the point where they still don't react to other animals and stuff. So now, if the fundraiser that's currently going on gets completed, the formal training will go into that, and then they hopefully become adoptable dogs. And that's the thing is she needs to get some animals adopted, and in order to rescue more, and it's a vicious cycle. And then there's the ones you lose and things. So, if anybody can help, even sharing and just getting the word out there is great.
Yeah, it's kind of like kids, they get taken from home. You got to get some of them adopted so you can bring in more.
The
It's similar.
kids. I don't want to make be the problems with kids need people dedicated to that more than this. But
Yeah.
the situation worldwide for dogs and animal lovers and things like that is very bad. The bottom line is economies aren't doing great everywhere, and some people struggling just are letting their dogs out. And you could just spend a little bit of time on the internet and see lots of places trying to get dogs adopted. And if they're not a cute little puppy right away, then the chances go way down that they're going to be adopted. So now you rescue a 2-year-old dog, put a year into medical and things like that, and you got to find somebody who wants a 3-year-old dog, or maybe they fall in love. But people aren't enough. I love my 3 dogs. I can tell you they're 3 very different personalities, etc., etc. But people don't get that close to them before adopting them. You really do have to make some type of connection, I think. So it's interesting. It's the most satisfying work I've ever done, really. So take it for that. It's pleasant.
Well, Miguel, I'm as always, I appreciate your time, and looking forward to. I bet that guy's gonna have some interesting stories. John Peretti. Anyone who's worked around John Peretti's probably gonna have some funny stuff
Yeah,
to talk
yeah.
about.
I'm hoping. I knew John too because we were judges with Abu Dhabi together.
Mm-hmm.
So me and him go way back, kind of thing. He was, he was. Me and him were sitting next to each other judging Hoyler's loss to Eddie Bravo. So, yeah, I'm hoping he has some stories, and he's,
Yeah.
and it should be good. And the thing is he's a window to the Gene LaBelle legend. So I'm hoping that we can bring about a little bit of history there, and get some knowledge on Gene, who kind of, we got an old version. Like, obviously he was, in his fighting peak in the 50s and 60s or whatever, but I think he didn't care if he played the clown and just joked around with people and stuff like that. And I think that hurt him his legit reputation, because people look at, like, him announcing on that WFF event that he did and think less of him. And, I don't think that's the case. So I'm hoping to get to the bottom of this.
Well, as always, appreciate your time, and anybody who supports this show, we appreciate you viewing it, and feel free to share it with some other people. Check out MMA Collector 74, which is where Miguel does stuff on YouTube, where you're going to see this interview that we were just talking about. MMA Collector 74. And
Yeah, and well, they debut. We put up a new interview every Wednesday.
and they got cool collector items too for people that, like memorabilia. And
Yeah, we have a show on that. It's on at this point. Ed, my partner there is, on seasonal work and really busy. So we're gonna wait for him to come back and just hold the fort with the interviews. So something out there for everybody.
So as always, appreciate everybody taking time to check out these episodes, share it with some people if you like it, and let other people know about it. And until next time, appreciate it. Take care.